So today we're going to talk about transitioning and what it means for when somebody says that they are trans and they are working on transitioning. This is something that is close to me, and so I really wanted to kind of do a deep dive of it as I myself am going through a lot that's going on with this topic, and I wanted to just kind of share and let you guys know what it is that I had found. So, what does it mean to identify as trans? So, basically, being transgender is when someone feels their own gender is different than the one they were assigned at birth. That's like the very most basic generic definition that there is for it. When it comes to knowing about being transgender, there are some people that know as young children, as early as like 4 to 5 years old, and then there are some who don't really realize it until later on in life. They have kind of epiphany moments where it just kind of makes sense to them. Like, oh, this is why I'm doing this way. Got it. Okay. Um, Basically, it's when, for the kids who notice it at younger ages, they don't feel like they're in the right body. And so if they feel safe or feel like they have a safe adult, they will come and speak to their parents about it and ask them about it and see if they can explain to them what's happening, why they feel this way. And if that parent is indeed safe, then they will explain it as a whole, and there will be, a conversation that will help them to understand that there is nothing wrong with them. They are okay as they are. Um, Sometimes these kids, they can grow out of it and they just kind of realize, like, oh, okay, I do like dresses, or I do like playing like a boy, or whatever. But sometimes they're, when they grow, they're kind of like, I just like this or I like that. They don't really, I don't want to say like stick with it, but they don't stick with it. So, my next slide kind of talks about stigma and what goes on with being trans and the community and what we experience. But about 6% of the human population, or 25 million, identify as trans. And stigma, as we know, is basically it's just like a social thing that, it's labeling, stereotyping, separation, status loss, discrimination, and it's just kind of like the comic says, this kid's weird, and that's like the best way to describe it. Um, so with trans people, unfortunately, stigma, hate, fear, and anger, it's not something that they just experience on the street. They're For some, they experience it on the street and behind closed doors at home from their family and from their loved ones. Sometimes it's because of cultural differences, religious beliefs. It can lead to, that trans individual experiencing even worse hate, stigma, and, discrimination at home versus out on the street, because you can't just go home and, close your door and be okay. You live with that hate. You live with that stigma and that, like, constant spouting of anger and everything. You can't get away from it. Unfortunately, trans women do have it worse for the most part, or typically. Um, they have, according to studies and everything, they have high intimate partner violence, there's physical abuse, they have rejection from their family, police violence, the list goes on. And because of this stigma, this anger, this hatred, all of that, it makes trans women experience still more social structural vulnerabilities, in the sense that they have a hard time with, getting housing, getting employment, having that instability, so they can't provide for themselves, and they often find themselves staying in abusive situations just for the basic necessities of food, water, clothes, roof over the head. and it's really sad. They, because of these vulnerabilities and everything that, trans women face, and everything that goes on with stigma and this treatment, it brings down the ability for someone that can't, so it brings down their ability to recover, survive, or to be resilient in response to such stressful stimuli. And so it makes their mental health worse, and it brings them down to a level of depression, basically. So going forward from stigma with being transgender, not only do we have to face stigma from, family or, friends, police, all that good fun stuff, but there's also, on the plus side, on the flip side, I guess, there's, something called gender affirming care. And that's basically starts with hormone replacement therapy. And what that is when, you're a trans male, you get prescribed testosterone so that it can help with more of the male features, and going with puberty. I lost it, my goodness. But basically, you get prescribed testosterone, so it helps with hair growth, helps with voice changing, helps with basically kind of what, prepubescent boys are going through. For trans women, they're prescribed estrogen as well as hormone blockers, and that slows or stops excess testosterone that they have in their body. And then after that, there is surgery. So for trans women, because there's different types of surgeries and things for trans men, trans women. For trans women, surgeries are, they can have face change plastic surgery, they have breast augmentations, there's genital reconstruction, and what that means is that they remove the penis and they instead they restructure that area for being able to form and, I guess, like make a working, not only a working clitoris, but also a working like vagina. For trans men, they have a bilateral mastectomy, which is they have both of the breasts removed so that they no longer have that very obvious breast tissue there that, is very identifiable as, feminine. And they also have a hysterectomy as well as genital reconstruction of their own. There are different types of genital reconstruction for the male transitioning, or the trans male. So it's kind of a lot to get into, but there is a lot of different types that they can do for males as well. And then surgeries will typically happen 1 to 2 years after starting the HRT, because it gives you time to slowly come into like the changes of your body and to like understand and make sure that everything's flowing, everything's going okay, that you're not rushing it so as to actually, wind up hurting yourself or anything like that. So the gender affirming care, the HRT, it is a good baseline for starting, and it really does help you to understand that it is attainable, but it just takes time. So I didn't really have anything to write on this, just because it's more of a personal point of like, how does this affect everyday life? Obviously there are, things you can look up and see, but a lot of the time with transitioning, especially, this day and age, there comes in a lot of depression, high suicidal ideation, and there are suicide rates that, can rise or plummet. Everyday life is affected as well, because you go through body dysphoria. Sometimes there's even body dysmorphia. They kind of go hand in hand. You hate the way that you look. You hate what body you have. You feel like you don't look right. You're in, obviously, the wrong body. And it just takes a mental toll on you. And each day, some days are better than others, obviously. But it does take a toll in the sense that like mentally you know some days you feel like, wow, I really see the changes, you know, my face is, you know, becoming more masculine, my features are, or my face is becoming more feminine, my features are, you know. But there are other days where you look and you just see yourself as you were when you started, and a lot of time that is very disappointing, and it makes it very hard to want to keep pushing forward and doing the treatment and no, not treatment, but the therapy. And so, you know, you have to kind of learn to not pick and choose, but pick and choose some battles so as to make sure that you could do what's best for your mental health. It is recommended very strongly with HRT therapy that you do get into therapy and counseling. That way you can, you know, understand if there is any um, downside or anything or any problems with like family they don't accept. They, you know, you can get into programs that can help you, as well as just, you know, working through any issues that you may have mentally. So there are many different things, many different ways, but the biggest tolls are obviously, you know, the body dysphoria, body dysmorphia, seeing the physical change, lack thereof, as well as stigma, and just the way that you are treated as kind of other and like you don't really matter in a sense because you you know are different and you are doing this to be your best self. So I just wanted to kind of raise awareness as well as do my project, so that way if there are any questions, you know, when we went through the chapter, you would be able to see this and hopefully feel a little bit more interested and you would understand more. So yeah, that's my presentation.